the time being 11:36 a.m. on Wednesday, October 20th, 2021. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Kane County American Rescue Plan Committee. Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Bates. Here. Brown.
Here.
Frost. Gums.
It's here.
Kenyon. Leonard.
Leonard here.
Martin.
Martin here.
Molina.
Molina present.
Strothman.
Strathman here.
Pepe.
Deppie here.
And Sanchez.
Here. Okay, if someone could please ask for unanimous consent to approve the minutes of September 22nd and October 5th and October 7th of 2021.
That's Mr. Shepard's job. Chaperone unanimous
Mr.
consent.
Shepherd's job. He's not a
I'd like to,
member of the committee.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask for unanimous
Okay, Mr.
consent
Leonard
for the
asks for
minutes.
unanimous consent. Is there any opposition to such request? Hearing and seeing none, the minutes are approved. Do we have anyone here for public comments, agenda and non-agenda items? Online, not seeing anything. I didn't receive any word of any. So going once, going twice. All right, let's move on. Chairman's comments, not much to give you today, other than we do have two big resolutions on the agenda today. And unfortunately, I'm gonna ask that we postpone them until next week. I did discuss with members of the committee having our meeting next week, another meeting next week, and then that being the 2-week schedule that we will fall under to avoid falling it right after, just after executive committee each month. With the CARES Act, that wasn't so much of a concern, but with American Rescue Plan, we realized we need to be ahead of executive in the committee flow so that we can really have proper conversations that go through the full board. But of course, starting with this committee. So with your indulgence, do I have a consensus to make that change to the calendar? Okay,
Yes.
I wanted that official yes before I ask staff to adjust the county calendar. So we'll be following Finance Committee. So 10:30 a.m. Wednesday, the 27th. That will be our next meeting. Yeah, 10:30, just in case finance goes long. So thank you for agreeing to that adjustment. It'll help us out a lot as we go along through the process. So the two resolutions today, we just aren't far enough along in crafting what we need for your consideration. But we will have that in place for next week. So when we get to those parts of the agenda, if there are any conversation you'd like to entertain or questions you'd like to ask at this point, I'll entertain those, but just giving you a heads up. And for anyone listening online about the community support grant program, we won't be covering all the parameters of that and solidifying those today. So that will be next week on the 27th. Discussion items, expenditure and allocation of funds to date. That is going to be included in Mr. Phillips' program manager update. And since that is the case, we will just jump right to that. So Mr. Phillips, Peter Phillips is our program manager, and he's going to go through a brief presentation.
Hello, I'm Peter Phillips, Kane County Art Program Manager, American Rescue Plan Program Manager. And I've got a couple PowerPoint slides that we've put together. And it's going to start with, I think a lot of people I would be interested in, I'm in it, so I am interested in, is a listing of some of the activities, and there are more activities this list could have gone on, of how the energies and focus of the program manager have developed since I joined on September 7th through today. So some of these activities, of course, the employment onboarding with HR, that's complete. There are some continuing activities that will then go into annual training with the standard sexual harassment, the ethics training, open meetings training, I got a lesson on last night, and cybersecurity, which I have to complete. Those are all ongoing and will be recurring. Specifically though, I have been developing my knowledge base in training, in the sense that we have established some of this training real time as we've been moving. And this is tied to another slide with the date of the formation of the committee, and then the determination that my position and a consultant would be required. So the knowledge that I've been acquiring and will continue to acquire is anything related to Treasury guidance to date, which we now know to be the IFR, the fact sheet, and the FAQ. Within those documents, there are links to subdocuments. One that is of primary importance to us is the compliance and reporting element. There is a specific document within these documents. So as I'm consuming this, I am also listing what these documents are so that we have a quick source, so that we do not have to go through a process of reading all these documents to find out what the subdocuments are. And then some of the subdocuments have other documents and regulations. There's section 602 and 603, which have been expanded a number of times and now exist in the current IFR as the latest iterations are 602Cs and 603Cs, with other previous steps of 602 steps of A's and B's. So that is a developing guidance, and ultimately we're waiting on the final determination, which will further solidify the guideposts that we're going to be putting in place as a matter of my position. Further on, next, I've participated. The process had already started of interviewing the firms that would be a professional services firm for us. So I started by sitting in on those interviews, presentations, and from that perspective, making my own assessments and participating in the ongoing selection process that is before you folks. Further, we've also, and I've actively been participating in the development of the Submittable application software, which will be replacing the Zoom Grants tool that we have been using. Submittable is a robust system. It's going to be redundant, and it's going to be able to grow with us in this program. Those meetings have been held down in ITD's conference room and via Zoom with the Submittable developers. We are about, I would say, about 90% complete. There are some elements of that need to be completed, which is regarding language that the state's attorney's office and my position are interfacing with, as well with Mr. Sanchez. And we will have some results in that regard for you to consider in future coming soon, in near future meetings. And that will also involve ultimately a presentation of the application that I envision being done by IT, as they are going to be retaining ownership. The application is being developed, but is going to be housed on our enterprise system and managed by us. Let's see here. Another key element that I've been, that I started with one perspective, made a shift a couple of weeks in, is establishing relationships, primarily at this point with departments, both department heads and their staff, that would, I see, conceptually supporting us very effectively, given some certain conditions. That is an assessment, an active assessment, and that type of assessment will be something that is critical to this program, that we are assessing the program, the processes, our reporting, our compliance, our risk, our individual participation in that, and ultimately how we can, in the best way possible, self-serve and be self-reliant and develop these processes as a resource for the county. Now, some of those relationships I had conceptualized that I was going to be meeting with certain members and all members at some point. I backed off from that because as I started consuming the Treasury document, I determined I need to have a basis of understanding to have conversations with you folks that are productive. So me getting into continually reviewing and discussing with state's attorney and committee members, the guidance is elemental and fundamental to us being successful. I have to be the subject matter expert for you on that. And that is what I'm focused on primarily, is consuming that information. Now, that information will not be retained in my head. I am devising checklists, short summary worksheets that we can refer to that are functional for us as a group. They will ultimately be placed in a site being developed within SharePoint that will be exclusive to this program. And it will be accessible and should be accessible by everyone that is participating in it. And not individually, but simultaneously, I've been conceptualizing the processes that I need to put in place based on my experience as first a project manager and then a program manager and an operations manager. And those will ultimately be documented formally. They're in the stage of being developed. I have, as I take everyday working notes as I interact with people, I'm referring to notes, interaction, and experiences and perspectives in conjunction with assessing current processes and resources that the county has and determining an appropriate form of action based on resources available and identifying both the value monetarily and the value to the program of processes or tools that we would acquire or develop. But my thinking on that is to start with what we have, assess what is appropriate, and build from there. And part of that assessment is already determined that we have unbelievable knowledge available to us in the form of department heads and staff, some specific organizations within the county in particular. And I'm in the process of making that known, and it will be memorialized. And then ultimately, I would say that this presentation and me standing here before you is born of the fact that on the 11th, I had determined that I had sufficient orientation and understanding of governmental procedures because I come from the other side of government.
I'm glad you do.
My practical experience is based in the military and then transition into corporate America. And that is my perspective, which I'm adjusting to your perspective. So on the 11th, days leading to the 11th, I had told Mr. Sanchez and Madam Chair that I felt that I was in a position to appropriately take the wheel with you folks in my passenger seat. So that is this first slide of what has taken place, a snapshot of what have taken place. Much more has taken place. Now, the next slide is a representation of where we are with the Submittable Tool. It's the Kane County Submittable Application Portal. It's about 90% complete. I have actionable items that are documented that will be presented to the committee of board-related decisions that need to be made regarding language and some of the criteria. However, this will be the landing page. This has been completed and all of Submittable's developmental processes are completed. They're waiting on just some further clarification of language of data. But you'll see that we've mocked up Charles Lasky and his crew. I found an image that on the internet that has been used widely and is accepted as a representative icon for the program. Charles took the American flag and the American Rescue Plan line. He adjusted the colors, assessed that, first of all, that it was appropriate that we could use this. And he made some enhancement to it to make it ours. But this is the page that our applicants are going to see. And there are criteria behind this page that will establish an element of eligibility to collect data for us to use and vet. So this is the submittable portal. And this contains tools that we will incorporate into this program. And this tool is expandable beyond just the grant element that is going to be consolidating. So the next page,
Question, please.
excuse me.
Go ahead, Ms. Bates.
Mayor. This looks beautiful, and could we also put a King County logo on that page?
We can.
I'd like to see that. I don't think we have to vote on that, but Madam Chair, would that be okay?
Gums, just one other thing to maybe note, an IL for Illinois, because there's other King counties and I would hate somebody to,
Uh-oh.
I don't know if
Yeah,
We actually have a version of this with it on and with it off.
oh, okay.
So this is a functional application as we provided to Submittable. And this is a static page. It's just representative of what it's going to look like. So yes, we can make adjustments in that regard.
That being
and
said,
I-
if there's anyone from Kane County, Montana listening, hello.
and the logo would help there too.
It's
Maybe.
actually Kane County, Utah.
Oh, there's Utah. Yeah. I think there's a few.
There's an Aurora, Colorado too, so we have to.
There's a lot of auroras. Yeah.
Continue.
It's a Batavia, New York.
Okay, so that would be it for the
I'll see that.
submittable page. That's representative to show you where we are, some of the work we've been doing. And this being complete is really going to kick off our application process, I see. So the next page is, now it shrunk again. I expanded this. I'm sorry, the visual's a little off because the workbook is, the width is shrunk. This is a representation. These numbers are not intended to be workable numbers for you to refer to, though they are actual numbers at a point in time recently. The reason this is conceptual and in development is because this requires a sit-down meeting between this position and the finance group to appropriately devise line item numbers within the account that's set up based on their guidance and input. This will be determined. We're not going to determine what line items should be and force them into finance. Again, this is another element we're working in tandem with. So I have talked to the extent that this is a fine representation of the format that we would use. And I'm presenting this for discussion's sake.
Yeah, so these numbers are not representative of actuals. For instance, you might see $1 million going to Aurora Interfaith Food Pantry. That has not been determined. This is just a test, so we know what it looks like when we put stuff in that field. Mr. Martin?
Maybe I don't understand what we're doing here. Is this is supposed to be the application?
Is your microphone on? Mr. Martin?
Hello?
Yeah, there you go.
This is the application.
No, this is going to be the evolving worksheet that shows us, the committee and the board, where all the money is being spent in the whole program. So we'll be able to see the totals, how much money has been expended, how much is left in the different sections where it's been allocated, things like that. So this is an ongoing worksheet, like similar to what Onzik would present to us in various ways.
Then why do we have all of the logo and all
Oh,
these
that's separate.
discussions? I mean,
So
it's-
that's separate. Peter's just going through some of the things we've been working on. This was actually a discussion item we were hoping to have it more officially completed at this point, but as Peter was saying, we still have to have some meetings with finance so that we have the right lines of communication open to make sure these numbers are populated with the accurate totals each meeting. So it's separate from the application process and portal.
I think you better move this slide fast before Aurora Interfaith Food Pantry comes to collect their
I know.
checks. So,
Okay.
This is all test
okay.
information, so.
just fast.
Yeah, this is an Excel workbook that is for internal use and reference to commingle with the financials created by the finance. This is a snapshot. So the next page,
Excuse me, I have a question.
Chair.
I appreciate the effort on this and it's absolutely needed, but why can't we use the platform we already have? Isn't it through New World? And just put in the budget lines so that it matches accordingly, because we're going to have to allocate it through budget anyway. And we already know what the budget is going to be and just spin it over and do the report. Why are we, a question, why are we replicating something that we already have?
I'm not aware that we have a worksheet document like this.
But we get our financial reports. And it's going to have to be entered in there anyway, because we're going to have to account for it through our regular accounting procedures and paperwork.
Like general ledgers and things like that. So this is a way to put all of that information into one worksheet
But-
that doesn't otherwise exist.
But it does exist because each one of these has to have a budget line item.
Okay, well, we can talk after the meeting about that because I'm not aware that there's any kind of document or report that can give us all these numbers in one spot. So.
I think just a query would do that. When you put in the line item numbers, the account numbers, I believe that you can put that query in to New World and it'll pull up that report. A departmental report, we can certainly take a look at it to find out what their budget is, what their expenses are, any potential income. This is simply part of that budgetary reporting.
We'll look into that and see if there is a more simple way to do this.
I think it'll be much more specific.
I do know that Erica Wagner and Joe Onzik are aware that we've been creating this and haven't at this point said, hey, here's an easier way to do that. So we'll just have to get more specific with them and find out if what you're talking about is something that is comparable with this.
That would be helpful.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
the board is used to be able to read the budget reports. And this way it's an apple to, you're just creating another apple for the budget tree, another branch of the budget tree, rather than creating another report that has to be implemented into the actual budget report.
This is just a quick snapshot.
Oh,
for the
no,
community.
I understand.
Yeah.
I totally understand what this is. But
Also for the public to understand, but point taken. So we'll follow up with financing and drill down into that and see if there is what you say is a simpler way of
Okay,
doing this.
okay.
Thank you for the recommendation. And I think you had one more slide.
yes, and here is the slide. This will convert to a timeline. I would anticipate based on the outcome of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th slide. So this is a progressive charting of what has taken place thus far, initiating with the ARPA Act being put in force and the Treasury IFR on March 11th, and it culminates with a yet to be defined exact date for a final closeout deadline for the ARPA project. So that will be the begin and the end of our timeline that's going to be developed. Now, the steps that we need to take to create our exact timeline are bulleted below these tiles. Things that we have that are pending that would be resolved at a future meeting would be the finalization of consultant service agreement, establishment of the official funding categories and subcategories, a standardization of a vetting process for applicants, which state's attorney and this office are working on actively. And then ultimately a Kane County comprehensive plan. Now, the last bullet at the bottom is qualifies these things having a condition of the
Somebody wanna answer
final
that?
ruling that is pending. And I believe that is
Somebody,
unfortunately
hold
my
on
phone.
1 second. Oh, is that your phone? All right, go ahead and grab it. You interrupted yourself, sir.
So the last bullet is just a reference that the Treasury's final ruling is pending, date unknown.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Phillips? Mr. Shepro?
Yeah, they reference to the Kane County Comprehensive Plan.
Yes.
What is that?
Well, King County at the moment lacks a documented plan, which would be either a presentation, a PowerPoint that is converted into a document for dispersal that expresses our intent, our goal
For
for
this
Kane
program?
County.
Yeah, for all of the money.
Maybe we could find a better term for it, because there is a Kane County comprehensive plan that was adopted and is in force with respect to other issues.
Understood.
So for ARPA.
Just
Yeah.
ARPA, King County.
I mean, that is the topic of the conversation. So. Any other questions? Okay, there is a couple documents that Assistant State's Attorney Coyle distributed in relation to, again, the questions of what is the program manager been up to, as Peter addressed, but the job description that we actually had to clean up a little bit. So we just did that the other day. And then the other one is the ARPA vetting flow chart, which is a document that is in progress. We're still finalizing it, but it just gives you a snapshot of where our thinking is at as far as how we're going to be vetting different types of applications. So it'll be flexible for departmental, for outside requests and things like that. Just as an example of work product that we've developed just in the past couple weeks, really. So things have been pretty busy behind the scenes with Mr. Phillips and the state's attorney and everyone else. So, okay, if there are no more questions under that section, we will move on.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Tepe.
Yes. I do have a suggestion I'd like to make and some explanation of it. You and I had a discussion last week about a way for us to start talking about and handling particularly the internal requests, as well as getting more of the members of the committee more actively involved in helping out with this. So I have a suggestion to add, which would probably go to this vetting process. So we've received over 70 requests from Kane County departments. Okay. And we as board members understand many of the details and are in a position to perform an initial review and, let's say, a vetting of these applications. So instead of immediately turning these over to a consulting organization, let's first make sure that these requests are ones that we want to support. So I propose that we take the 10 members of this committee and create 5 teams. Each team would have 2 committee members and be coordinated by Peter Phillips. Each team would then be assigned 10 to 15 of these internal requests to review. And the assignments of teams and requests will be made by the committee chair and Mr. Phillips. And that review, including the requesting department, will take place in the next 30 to 45 days. Our objective would not be to determine if this is applicable under the rules of ARPA, but determine if we want to move forward with the request at all. So vetting the request will be the job assigned to our outside consultant. And then the teams will then report their recommendations to the full committee for consideration. So the key thing here is that it gets everybody in here involved, okay? It has us vetting whether or not we even want to pursue with some of these applications that have been made, Okay, and I think it's something that can be accomplished in a relatively short time period.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Tepe. You're a little ahead of the agenda. That was the next item. And I do have a little PowerPoint that I'll go through discussing some of the various options, that being one of them. And I'm glad when we talked that you were on the similar page with some of the things I was thinking and helped flesh out some more of those ideas. So that being said, let me pull up yet another PowerPoint, but hopefully it's worthwhile. Okay, so there's a few different things to consider and a few different ways that we can go about this. So this is where I'm really going to need you guys to give your input and feedback and really kind of let you decide which direction we're going to go with this. It's going to be, it's not going to be a quick process. I don't think we're going to have all this done in a month or two, but who knows? I could be wrong. But a few things to consider. We do need to pare down the list before we send it off to a consultant. Originally, I had thought, and some of us thought maybe we'd just have the consultant vet it and they can kind of help us understand what's there and what categories they fall under. That, looking at the requests that have come in, I'm pretty sure, if not all of them, almost every single one of them will be eligible under some category of the ARPA, whether it be payroll reimbursement, revenue recoupment, or one of the other four main categories. So we pretty much know that is already, whether or not it's specific in detail, we know that it's going to be eligible. Sending them all off to a consultant first just take a lot of time and money that we don't necessarily need to spend at this point. So I think the main task, as Mr. Tepe alluded to, is getting to a point where we whittle away this list. So we have 78 requests that came in. Do we pare it down to 20, 30, 40? We don't know yet, but we need to get to a smaller number than 78. Because I don't know, at least, I don't assume that we're going to want to fund all 78 projects. Ideally, we would want to determine an allocation, a total allocation amount for these departmental requests sometime in November. Whether that's realistic or not, I don't know. Some of these requests will fall under revenue recoupment, which has its own kind of conversation and timeline. Some of these will fall under the main ARPA categories that money can be sent out right away. Others will be payroll reimbursement ideas, and that also has a timeline. So just something for us to think about. And actually, after this meeting, Mr. Phillips is going to send out documents from this meeting to everyone. And then also he'll be following up with each of you committee members to just ask, what are some of your, let's just start ballparking some figures. Here's a pie chart with all the different categories. What percentage would you want going into this category? What percentage would you want going into that? Either dollar amounts or percentages. Is just another tool to help us come to some agreement, to some consensus on where we want to land. But this is a big one, determining that allocation amount for these departmental requests. We're also going to request that the departments prioritize their projects. We did have a simple prioritization of like low, medium, and high. Almost all projects came in as high priority, not surprisingly. So some departments only have 2 requests. We don't need a prioritization from them, but some have 11 to 15 requests. And I think it'll really help us when we start to pare down this list to know which ones are the most important as seen through the eyes of the department head or elected official, so that we know if we're going to only spend $20 million in that direction, here's the first 20 million from their list. So we're going to need that prioritization. So we'll be sending something out to all department heads and elected officials to engage in that process. Maybe we'll have that prioritization list by next week at the meeting. The full supporting documents for all of the requests, if I were to put everything in one document, it would be over 2,000 pages long. And so, as Mr. Phillips had mentioned, we're working on kind of a share page that we can house all of this kinds of information. I envision something that will have every important document and piece of information related to this program so that we can access it from the comfort of our own home if we need to. And it doesn't need to be sent through an email. You can do it at your own pace, because otherwise to send this in, all the information out from these requests through email would just be incredibly laborious. You'd have probably 30 different emails just to get it. I mean, we don't need to go to that level. So database, not email. So that is coming. We'll be working on that and getting that put together. But for now, you do have what was sent out last night. The main questionnaire section for each project application, and it's organized by department. So that one PDF, it's about 440 pages long. If you go to the bookmarks tab to the left, that's key. Don't just scroll through and try and find what you're looking for. Go to the bookmarks tab on the left. Each department's projects are categorized, it's foldered, so you can get to things a little more easily and not get so lost in that huge document. You go right to the department request you're dying to see. And you guys all have that with a related spreadsheet. We're still working on some informational numbers issues with the app, but what you have is good enough on the spreadsheet. The number's close enough. It's good enough to work with. And once that gets finalized, we'll send it out to you guys. But so everyone has that information. I believe, Peter, did you send that to just the committee last night? Okay, so we'll get that out to the full board as well for anyone who's not on the committee that's listening. And of course, we'll want that information. And any department heads, if you want to see what everybody else is asking for too and compare or whatever.
Excuse me.
Ms. Bates.
Tabs on the left? Bookmarks on
Yeah,
the
there's a
left?
bookmark symbol. It looks like a ribbon.
Oh,
Top left there.
got it. Oh.
That'd be a polygon.
All right,
Any
thanks.
math
All
buffs? Okay. Yeah, so that's like the table of contents. So it's easier for you guys to navigate that information. So just some things to consider with this departmental request situation. We definitely want to pare the list down. And I think we probably will want to select what we're going to fund before we send it off to the consultant firm for more official vetting. Okay, so there's different ways I started to think about this, and then I thought about it some more and realized how we go about this will be determined by when we want the departments to come in and present on their projects. So we have 14 departments. Some have one request, some have 15, 5.5 on average. The two options would be, we can start scheduling starting in November. We can select departments to come in, maybe some of the smaller ones. And then ahead of those meetings, we all go through the project requests. We look at the information. If anybody needs supporting documentation, that will be sent to them. They can ask questions leading up to the meeting of the department heads. But then in the meeting, during the present or after the presentations, we can all get it all out. What questions you have, what concerns you have with the project. And we'll just keep going on that schedule. So every meeting will have a couple presentations or a couple departments depending, and everyone does their homework leading up to that presentation so that we can kind of go through it in order. The other way to do it would be to go through some kind of process where the committee reviews everything internally one way or another. And I would think then we would pare down the list, and then bring the departments in to start talking about, okay, if you had 11 projects, we're going to listen to 7 of them for consideration. Maybe we'll come back to some of the others later, maybe not. Both options, I imagined, would be followed by a riverboat grant style selection process. So we've heard all the information, we've done our homework, we've considered all the angles, and we get all the requests that we're going to consider, and how much do you want to put in for each? And we start that and do it maybe over 2 iterations, 2 meetings, just like the Riverboat Grant Committee does as well. So with these 2 options, option A, again, we can start in November. Everybody just has to do their homework in anticipation of those meetings so that the questions are more appropriate. For the second option, we'll need at least a month until we can bring the presentations in, because if everyone's going to review it internally, we don't want to have the presentation starting before we've finished our review process. So a couple ways to slice option B of having the committee review it. One being what Mr. Tepe alluded to, assigning group work to committee members. This requires buy-in from all of you. There are 10 of you. So as Vern mentioned, we could split everybody up in groups of 2. That avoids the Open Meetings Act violations. So you can meet together and with department heads, however you wish to go over. You would get about 15 or 16 applications. Each duo would get about 15 or 16 applications since there are so many. But again, some are small and simple. Some don't even have dollar amounts. They're more discussion pieces to move in a possible direction. I would imagine the timeline we would want to undergo is 1 month. For any review process with the committee, we should probably try and do it within a month. If everyone's working actively throughout the week and with their partners, And this doesn't mean you can't go through the other applications, but you would be responsible for at least those 15 to 16, engage with department heads and electeds, ask them questions, kick the tires a little bit, see what's underneath the hood, and then come back and report to the committee. And we can determine how exactly we want to do that. Do you want to do that in open session? Do you want to have typed recommendations or reports that you would like to put together with your duo, and that goes to everybody? And then we just have the conversation in open session as we bring in elected officials and departments. However you guys would like to slice that. That's one option that at least I conceived in conversation. The other would be a committee survey. So everybody goes through the requests on their own. They type down their thoughts and impressions. We can share them via email or just during discussion. Review it by department in open session. And then send out a poll. After we all talk about things a little bit, before we bring the departments and send out a poll, have everybody select their top picks. We can go through all 78 and you just go 1 through 78 and order them, rank them how you'd like, highest to lowest. But that would be another way that we could do this committee review process. And then during all this, we're going to come up with an allocation. How much is it going to be? 30 million, $40 million. So then we can start whittling this list down. Timeline 1 month, and then ideally final selections can begin in February or March. So we go through this process of about a month of reviewing. We bring the departments in, and then we get down to final selections. So that's all I've got. This is just some ideas put together based on conversations and my own thinking. So I'm completely open to whatever ideas you guys are comfortable with. And I'll start with Mr. Shepro.
I just, I would want to make sure that the state's attorney is okay with the idea of 5 groups of 2, whether or not they would be considered a subcommittee of 2. If it's a subcommittee, then even if there's only 2, it's subject to open meetings.
Vince, do you have an answer to that?
We can discuss it back at the office and get an answer. If that's the direction you want to go, we'll definitely, I wrote down Mr. Teppi's kind of version, so we'll take a look at that.
It might really just be a simple matter of labeling it correctly.
Yeah, I didn't envision this as a subcommittee process. It's just committee work,
Right.
standard committee work. It's not a specialized. Mr. Leonard.
Then just a comment on, are there any of the list of 78 that are time sensitive, such as would not meet your 2022?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, perhaps the contact tracing request, something related to the pandemic, maybe time sensitive, but not that I think we'll be safe with this. If it comes back that there's something that needs to get determined quickly, well, then there'll be fires under each seat when you come in.
Are
and we'll get
vaccinations
the-
in here? On that,
The vaccination clinics,
Spreadsheet.
contact tracing is in there, stuff
Vaccinations
for
would
mental
be-
health and equitable. Yeah. Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to say that I totally agree with Mr. Teppi's suggestion for a number of reasons. If we can break this up, the 78 projects, into 5 different groups, we can spend the appropriate time to evaluate those. For each of us to try to go through 78 projects would be almost insurmountable. So I think if we can break it up, do it in groups of 2, where we get 15 or 16 each, evaluate those, and then as our little 2-person evaluation group reports back to the committee, then we can, as a group, decide whether we agree with that committee or not. But the work of evaluating all 78 can't be done by each and every one of us. So I think we need to have the 2-person group evaluating 15 or 16 projects and then reporting back to, it will save a lot of time too. Secondly, I think we should, as 2-person groups, go to the department, not have the department come to the committee as whole, but go to the department, talk with them directly about what their needs and wants are. And then we can bring back an informed decision on what we think is needed or not needed on those 15 or 16. So I agree with that. I think the other thing we have to look at, and this is more of a long run thing, but I think it's very important that we look at it. I think we have to take a look at these and define whether these needs and or wants, whatever they may be, are operational or capital. If they're operational, that means that's going to be a continued expense. And with our budgets going forward, year after year after year, how can we sustain that? So I think it's really key. I know in the riverboat, as you had referenced, you were using a format similar to that. I think that's a very good format. And for 15 or 16 per group, it works great. But the key thing we try to do is stay away from operational, because that's an ongoing thing. And if they become dependent on that money and then that money is gone, what do? And then finally, I think one other important factor that we have to keep in mind is already, even though we haven't approved the 22 budget, in 23, we're probably going to need some of this money to balance that budget. It could be 7 million to 10 million. So I think we have to keep a little in reserve for that also. So those are just some of my concerns, but basically I wanted to say, I think Mr. Teppi's suggestion is the best and most efficient way to handle this. And it gets everybody involved. And instead of everybody trying to go over 78, we're going over 15 or 16 with someone else. And I think that works.
Well, for those board members that are documenting their time for IMRF, 78 projects might be a good use of that. So, Mr. Martin.
It's so hard to compliment Vern. For me. I like the simplicity of it. Okay, we can't all of this review, and I'm always uncomfortable when we have people coming up and making presentations for two reasons. Number one, I think everybody's minds get turned off after about the second presentation. And if we've got all the documentation and we have a group of people that are out and vetting them, it's never going to be a perfect deal, but it gets it done. And so I like that. I like the fact of communicating with the departments and not having them come in here with a wish list that we all get to look at. And we're all going to have a predisposed state of mind based upon our review in any event. But I'm not supportive of presentations. I like the idea of going out, wasn't that a scriptural thing when they went out in twos? And I like that idea. And I think we need to do that absolutely first before we do any of this other stuff, because we don't, until we know what we regard as our legitimate county needs, there's no way in my mind that I could say, well, this is how much we're going to give to the county. And we've said it before, giving it to the county is not taking it from people. It's just assigning the responsibility for spending that money in a way that we control. So I think we need to get it moving. And the way we get it moving is to get the applications, sit down. I think that it would be appropriate, at least in my mind, to facilitate the review. If you had, as much as possible, if you had people that were on the relevant committees that were part of the duos looking at it, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel of knowledge. And just sit down, get the list together, sit down. This is, and if there are mechanical things, I think Bill mentioned, that philosophically, we need to, as a group, say we're either going to include expenses, running expenses or not. And if we're not going to include them, that makes part of this easy. We just cut off anything that relates to periodic expenditures, which are going to continue after this is done. So I just would like to have the list done, and I think it is done now, right? I mean,
yeah.
Okay, so the list is done. Let's divvy up the deal. Meet with department heads, come back with having culled through the list. And then.
So you're going to be on the development
Well, I know I've got a long list. I'm just saying that ought to be a
Yeah.
focus though, because
Uh.
that's the committee, that those people on that committee ought to be more conversant.
I think John and Bert should use your mic.
Chairman?
Ms. Bates.
So many things have been said here, including the idea of the small, not subcommittees. And I think that does sound like a good way to work on this. I'd like to know, how are the teams to be assigned? I think it'd be interesting to have people from opposite sides of the aisle on the same committee. I think that might make things much more dynamic. It's just a question, how are they going to be assigned? I would also like to speak to the idea of operational versus capital, because I believe that the spirit of the ARP is operational expenses. So even though capital is a one and done, so that makes things easier and some cleaner in some respects, I think we have to consider operating expenses as part of the spirit of ARP. So that's going to keep things exciting and interesting. We did have in one of our listening sessions, we talked to the executive director of the Aurora Food Pantry about, well, if we give you money for a year, is that teaching you to fish, or is that just handing you a fish? You know the story. And she said, well, Mavis and committee, what can happen when you give us operational money for a year is we can prove that this new position or this new program is viable, needed, and exciting and worthwhile. And we can go out to find grants from the foundations. So sometimes operational is really teaching somebody how to fish. My ongoing philosophy on this is that whereas anything we do through the county is for the people of the county, and we all know that, and that's always our best goal. I believe that I'm hoping for half of this money to be sent to our nonprofits, because that keeps the money closer to the people. It takes it to the experts in the committee, in the community. And after all, who's in favor of big government?
Madam Chair, I saw your hand up.
Okay, just as I believe in appropriate government, and I think we all do, not big, small, appropriate. But that's just rhetorical statement to your statement, Mrs. Bates. A couple of things, and thank you. The financial pie, to develop the financial pie. I believe it may be premature to put that request together because we don't see what the internal requests are. They're outlining if we need to save additional money for the 2023 budget, that should be pulled through, and what other expenses that we are aware that the county already is able to obtain out of this money, because it is certainly for county use. So that money has to be put on that chart as allocated. There is $4 million we've already allocated to our public communities, our not-for-profit communities. So we know that's out of there. I have an issue with the operational versus capital. I think some of the opportunities that may be presented are revenue enhancing for future development of the county. So I would like not to have those just thrown out for capital for building. And if I may remind the committee, even if you build something, there are expenses related to that, ongoing expenses with that as well. So I think we ought to open up this opportunity for review with clean eyes to take a look at quality of product and quality of project, rather than predetermine what we feel is appropriate or not. And we all do have biases towards some of the programs we feel. And I do like the idea of having a small committees or small reviews, and not even a committee, just small review teams to take a look at these applications and to bring those reports back to the general committee for their analysis. It'll save time, and it'll also truly allow the opportunity for all of Kane County's representatives to have their feet on the ground, to hear what is needed for the county, because I'm sure all of our department heads and elected officials have given very good thought about what projects they would like to work on and have funded with this ARP money. But let's not throw the budget out first and do restraints, because we may find that you may suggest your 60,000 or $60 million when actually we may only need $50 million, or we may need 65 million. So at this point, I think flexibility is important in investigation.
Ms. Gums? What do you think about the idea of duos forming in pairs?
Yeah, I think getting together with your, I mean, we do that every day in committee work. So I think, you know, we can't handle that amount on a larger scale. So it makes perfect sense.
Just wait till you get to the supporting documents and you'll really
Well,
understand.
you know, I kind, yeah, but I mean, you know, all this is kind of a little bit commonsensical to
Yeah.
me, but.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Strathman?
I also support working in the twos, the duos, whatever we name it. I think that if we were all responsible for looking at all 70, human nature would be for us to go to the ones that we're familiar with and gloss over the ones that we're not familiar with or not familiar with the everyday working of that need. And I think that to have a smaller focus would then require us to dig down a little deeper naturally and see what we're, you know, see what the recommendation is. So I like Vern's idea a lot. It reminds me very much of the riverboat funding process, which worked really great for us this year.
Thought just popped in my head, shockingly. Would it be scary to do like more than one thing? We could do a poll also.
Yeah.
And in addition to the poll, we could,
Yeah.
you know, I think everything would be beneficial to this group if we did a poll amongst everybody while we're at the same time doing our teamwork.
Yeah, we can, any way you guys want to conduct this, I'm completely open to helping facilitate that. So hold on, Mr. Brown had a comment or question.
I just wanted to, I guess, concur with what everybody's been saying here. I think it's all great ideas. But if we do go ahead with this idea of a two-person, as we've discussed, I think it's important, and I can't remember, I think it's important that we recognize that there's, what is there, 4 or 5 buckets of criteria that the Treasury Department looks at as to what's eligible. And I think we all need to be very familiar with what those 4 or 5 are.
Yeah.
So that as we're doing our review, we should be looking at that's something that we should be looking at as far as what we should accept. Because if I'm just going to say IT as an example, because he's sitting here, if there's 5 requests from IT and 3 of them meet all 5 of those buckets and 2 of them only meet 1 of those buckets, well, certainly that should help us in our review of what should work best as far as the Treasury Department looks at.
Yeah. Helping us prioritize.
Because we have to remember that if we don't meet the Treasury Department's criteria, we have to pay the money back.
Right. Yeah. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for bringing that up. One of the things that I think is lacking with this committee is a mission statement. What is the county looking at doing with the funding? And that could be both for the not-for-profit grants as well as the internal grants. What are we trying to achieve? And a mission statement is a simple sentence. A very complicated thought in that sentence, but a simple sentence, which would be a guiding light to any decisions that are ultimately made by this committee, even those recommendations that go down through the accounting firm that'll eventually be hired to do the review. Does it meet that criteria? And it combines the qualifications from the Treasury Department, as you said. But what are we trying to do with this money? Are we trying to improve the economy of the county? Are we trying to improve the health and well-being of the county? Are we trying to do equity with the county, with the money? What are we doing with it?
Trying to
Well, then it
Rescue
has to
your-
be, let's put it into a statement so that that statement can be reviewed and anything we do matches that statement. That's a good mission statement.
All right, yeah, I mean, it's not a bad idea. My guess would be all of us have different concepts of what we're trying to do with it. But we can start crafting something and distributing it and seeing how you guys want to edit it. I mean, that's something that it's not out of the question, certainly. Mr. Leonard, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I have no problem with the mission statement. And since we're going to have a meeting next Wednesday after the Finance Committee, maybe each of us on the committee could submit to you a mission statement.
Yeah.
You could review those, come up with some kind of an idea. We could vote on it and be done with that.
I
And
like that idea.
I think that
That's-
might work. And then I think,
We could waste an afternoon on a mission statement.
Yeah.
yeah, true.
Once you get your teams together, how about if the teams decide that?
But it's got to be a short mission statement, like one or two sentences.
Simple and
And,
direct.
you know, but my thought is, let's get our teams or review groups set up today.
Okay.
And then we need to decide how to allocate those projects.
Mhm.
And then we can start doing it.
And if I may suggest, if you have the allocation of the teams, why don't the teams present that so that there are 5 mission statements and that could be the very first working relationship that the
Unless we
team
get that
has.
established today, sure.
Mhm.
Okay, were there any other questions or comments on this process at this point, before we talk about who's on what team?
Well,
Bumps.
just a thought, we talked about having people on certain committees that are looking at these projects. Geographically, though, also that might matter. So we have people, in geographical areas. I know nothing about farming, you know what I mean? So is there a project that I don't know anything about that Mike can handle? So if we have 2 people close to each other, maybe that's beneficial, maybe it's not. I'm not sure, but just throwing that idea out there.
Ms. Gums, I'm going to be out on a tractor probably tomorrow and Saturday. If you want to come out and ride with me, I'll show you a little bit about farming.
Only if
I'll
you
be
got a
there.
straw hat,
I'll be there.
only if you got a straw hat.
I heard it.
So if that is something you guys want to do right now in open session, is come up with these. I don't know that would be allowable discussion outside of open session. It would be easier to do outside of open session, but I think probably we should.
Under process. You gotta Put 10 names in a hat and draw them.
Oh,
Yeah.
that'd be funny.
Why don't we do
that
that?
works.
I gotta, I'll have to get
I
with you.
think it's fair.
Well, I do like the idea of people in that committee, related committee, going through those departments if and when possible. Like Myrna Molina, Chair of Judicial and Public Safety, I would think she would be on the state's attorney. She would get the state's attorney one, just as an example. So what do you guys think? You want to just draw hats, draw straws?
How many different departments are represented by the 78?
14 departments. So it's going to be some odd groupings.
Some people have.
Yeah, some will have 15, some will have 16 if it's parted out evenly.
Mr. Chairman, I think this would be better handled individually. I don't know that we can coordinate that here at this time. Unless we draw a name or write them down.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I would just draw a name.
Should let me give an example. Should I be the one to look at environmental and water?
Well, if that's the direction
Why
we're going to
not?
go to have.
Let's define the teams first,
Right.
and then we can allocate.
But
No
then you've got you've got 14 different departments represented, and that's only one. I mean, judicial public safety is only one. I like the spontaneousness of just putting your names in a hats and draw it. And
Yes, I
make it
agree.
with random. It's clean.
I'm seeing some head nods. Is there anyone opposed to that?
No, I didn't get my question answered.
Oh.
I'm still confused. So I would be, because especially we had this discussion last week of creating, of sending it back to committee, which would be kind of, so there's several here that involve environmental and water, which is just and correct because that's a big thing with our definition. So would we want me, as an example, to be the person looking at these issues? I would know the most about these probably, and I would have the working relationship with Jody and.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think what I'm hearing is to make it more random.
Well, I'm waiting that's my
Yeah.
question, yeah.
Mr. Leonard.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think if we randomly pick the names and have our two-person review group set up, then if there's someone who feels very strongly about being involved in reviewing a certain department or some of the areas of the department, you can request that.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely.
Get the teams established and then.
Yes. And just to follow up, Ms. Bates, once the recommendations come through, whatever the specialty is that everybody shares, there'll be ample time to have your voice in that. So you're not ever going to be restricted from that, but you may get environmental, you may get judicial. You'll also have the opportunity to work with somebody that you may not know that well, to be able to develop the team with that.
I'll just to inject one little idea. We did kind of go out of our way to make this a bipartisan committee. And I do think that's an interesting concept if we at least randomize it to the extent that we still have a Republican and a Democrat in each stool. I don't know if that's something that is relevant, if you guys care about that. Mr. Martin.
To counter my own statement before about having people on the committee and relevant committees deal with that committee. The other thing I don't think would be productive for the group would be to come into this room with 10 advocates who all are going to sit, and I want to support everything the development department wants. I think the random part of it takes that out of it. And you'll have to tell me what the political aspect of this is. I mean, it's good that this is a bipartisan committee. I don't see a Republican and a Democratic
don't
issue
either.
here. And
I don't either.
Well,
It's just
we
because
do a
it's
good
there.
job here of
Thank you.
addressing politics when it's appropriate to the conversation, but I don't want to inject politics into it
Thank you.
and say, I've got to sit, since I'm a Republican, I've got to sit across from a Democrat.
I
It
agree.
just,
Yeah, right. We got some claps. I like that. Shepro, did you have a,
I was just gonna say, there is no aisle in this committee.
yeah, there you go. I like it. All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you. We have a
Okay.
big round
So
circle.
let's get the names in a hat. Let's
Names
pick
in a
them out.
hat.
let's move on.
Yeah, let's get
Okay.
going.
Mr. Chairman,
Somebody got
bef-
pieces of paper. Well, there's 10 of us, so that we just need to select the teams first. And then we can figure out the departments, because each.
And if I may, I'd like to do the draw.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
It's even better.
Point of information, this is Molina.
Oh, hold on, you guys, hold on. Ms. Molina, go ahead.
Sorry, I know I'm not there present, but I count 11 with Chairman Sanchez. So
Wait, what did you say? Sorry.
I count 11 committee members
Oh.
with Jarrett.
Jarrett won't be in it.
Yeah, I didn't think I would be a part of that.
Okay, so you can't be on my team then. Okay.
I was gonna get picked.
All the committees.
No, he can't.
Yeah, I'll do all 78 on my own at home. I've already started, so we'll just keep going.
78.
Ms. Gums is facilitating us here.
Is that, what, are those names in that?
Wait, where's Madam Chair?
Yeah, we're gonna have to save those and scan them and put them into the minutes.
So Jarrett, after we pick the teams, I think would be nice if for our next meeting by next Wednesday, if there are any particular requests that members would like to be involved in,
Yeah.
they present that to you so that at the next meeting, we can allocate.
Yeah, so Mr. Leonard, thank you, because it'll be too difficult to figure out.
Yes.
Because
Can't do that.
we'll have to split some departments up between groups and
No, because whoever you.
don't tempt me. Don't tempt me, Ken.
You pick out.
For those listening at home, this is just us having fun.
Four, nine, four.
The rule of 78,
Yeah,
which I
There's
never
only five
understood.
it's
teams
rule
here.
72.
So stop.
Is it? It used to
Yeah.
be the rule
Yeah,
of
but you're putting, no, I'm right,
I know.
right?
Oh, so there's be
Okay.
two numbers of
Yep.
put in there?
So,
11.
So only, no, Jared, so only half the people should draw.
What the eighth?
Could very well be.
It's like Christmas.
All right. Anna?
about to, hold on a second. I'm mixing and causing the suspense to happen.
Just numbers.
Okay,
Pick you on all teams.
for the record.
So the way it is that everybody, you have paired numbers. So if you have a number one and somebody else is a number one, that's your team. But now the 78 applications, are those going to be done random as well? Or are those going to be amongst the 10?
Yeah, so Mr. Leonard kind of expressed a thought a moment ago that I was having as well. Well, let's get these teams formed today. And then
Mhm.
everyone just send in, if there are departments you would like to be on, we could start with that.
Mhm.
But we'll go through because some of these will have to get split up amongst teams. It's not going to be just an even, here, you have these three departments because of how many projects are in each. So that'll take a little more finagling to figure out. And then by the next meeting, we'll have it all put together.
So one team is going to have 7 and all other teams will have, no, one team will have 8, all others. Is that correct?
15 or 16.
No,
Yeah.
it'll just think of it in projects instead of departments.
No, I'm
Each
not-
team will have 15 or 16 projects that may just be 1 or 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
So divided by
5 teams divided by
78.
78,
Mr.
20 or
Tepe?
16.
Mhm.
Let's leave that up to the chair and Mr. Phillips and then,
Yeah.
Okay.
you know.
Call.
With you guys, so.
And then,
You know, there's going to be a request for forensic audit.
Oh.
so save those pieces. of
President
paper.
Drummer, I'll do the drum roll.
Anything and we'll be okay. What'd you say, Bill?
Ken, you can have mine.
Did he say a forensic audit?
Like Secret Santa. It is, it's like Secret Santa. Maybe we could combine those two.
Well, that
issues.
committee meets tomorrow, Mr. Shepherd.
No trading after
Oh,
you
I
These are
was
the
selected.
great.
sixes. These are
Yeah.
these are the 6s.
Did you get numbers?
I have not gotten enough.
He's not in it. He's not in it.
Rejects.
These are the rejects.
No peeking, yeah.
All right, so we have numbers 1 through 5. Is that what it is, Ms. Combs? Okay. Who has,
Somebody has to pull one for
Got extras.
Myrna.
Skip this.
Myrna will get the one left over.
What'd you get?
No, I know.
Miss Molina, we're sorry, you'll get the one that is left over.
That's okay. It's like gym class.
Well,
Because
have
we
to
don't
go
love you.
online, So we have the
Oh,
proxy
okay.
for them.
Okay, so who's gonna do the proxy?
Myrna, may I draw for you?
So I'm gonna do,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, thank you, Miss Bates.
Okay, I'll draw for Myrna.
Okay.
Okay.
Here's Myrna.
Myrna.
Here's Monica.
Okay, Monica.
Mavis.
Let me just say that out loud for the record,
Monica.
Monica.
Okay, why don't we start with the people who are offline?
Yeah. Do Monica and Myrna.
Online, Myrna's on the committee, but Monica's not.
So who's on, who
Leonard
else
was
is
on.
online?
No, Leonard's right here.
Leonard's right here.
We have everyone present.
Did you just do 10?
I did,
Yeah.
yeah, I did.
Yeah, 10.
Okay,
We had,
well then we're all good. We only have one online.
2 1s, 2 2s, 2 3s, 2
But
4s.
who's this?
That's exactly how it worked.
That's the extra for Myrna, right?
She's got Myrna's.
I've got Myrna and Mavis.
We're gonna have to,
You got-
Ruh-roh.
you got Michelle and Monica.
I've got, right, but Monica's not on the committee.
All right, ladies, why don't you do yours two first? Because you,
Okay,
Yeah.
that's the extra one.
Who else is online?
Okay,
I
who
got
has,
number 3.
hold on. Let's do it this way. Who's got number 1? Who's
no,
got
we,
number 1?
okay,
Let's
we
just
just
start
started, no, we just started with 3
Look at
here.
that. Two
Oh.
number ones.
there. Let's trade. I feel like you guys
Aw.
traded. All right, we got Tepe and Strathman. You guys can carpool to departments. All
Number 2.
right, who has number 2? Leonard and Kenyon. This is like summer camp. You guys
Carpool
were
too.
switching and trading. I said no trades. Leonard and Kenyon.
So we better keep our numbers.
Number 3. Who has number 3?
I've got.
Gums and Martin. All right.
Martin?
That sounds like a law firm. Gums and Martin.
Hey,
Number 4,
Bates?
Bates. And is that also Molina then? Because no one else is.
Nope.
Okay, so this is the
There's a
extra
four.
one.
There's nothing in here.
Okay, so this is the extra one.
Well, that is Monica.
Monica's not on the committee.
Oh, she's not.
Well, let's continue, and whoever didn't get a number is the
Yeah.
one who,
That's.
so that's Mavis,
Number four
okay.
is the
4 we'll
extra
come
number.
back
Go to
to.
five,
5,
Myrna
Number 5.
Myrna and Dave. So Melina and Brown,
and Dave.
also a
Brown.
law firm, it sounds like.
So who didn't get a number? Who's
Uh,
What
not
about
accounted for?
Oh, Frost.
Frost. See, there we go.
Frost.
I'm like,
Who's not here?
Bates and Frost.
I'm no money person, but I got this.
It's gonna be an interesting.
Right, so we have Tepe and Strathman,
Perfect.
Leonard and Kenyon, Gums and Martin, Bates and Froz, Melina and Brown.
Yes,
Perfect.
All right, we'll have to let Drew know.
very fun.
Or does he text? Somebody's texting me. Maybe it's Drew. I don't want to be with Bates. No, I'm just kidding. Loves you. Everybody loves you.
You've got cooties.
So
But
send
I'm
me,
very official.
if you guys
Well
can
done.
just email me, just simple requests for departments and we'll get that. We'll start from there.
And a little 1 to 2 sentence mission statement.
Statement.
Yes, and the mission statement.
So
Your ideas for mission
And then we're
statement.
done.
Keep it
each
short.
duo is to come in with a
Like how many
department and
words
a
should have
mission
missed?
statement.
25 words? 50?
Finding a check.
Let's see, with the mission, no more than 20 words. No more than 20 words for the
20
mission statement.
words. Ooh,
20 words.
That is.
Words or less.
that is a good exercise.
Yes.
We'll work out a mission.
Concise.
It's a haiku, haiku.
Submit it.
It's an elevator speech. What are you trying to do with the American Rescue Plan?
Rescue.
There you go, 20
Rescue.
words.
Like, you know,
Elevator speech.
like
That's
in
a
the title.
cat spell.
Make everybody happy.
And you get extra points if you put it in haiku form.
Okay, so for the next meeting, you guys will send in your department requests and mission statements. And I'll get to work with Peter on putting that all together. And ideally, the goal is we're gonna have all of the paperwork that we'll need for the consultant service resolution, at least to the level that hopefully you're all comfortable with. And we may even have a representative from the consultant firm come in to field any and all questions that you all have.
Next Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay.
So don't hold me to it, but I think that's the direction we're gonna go in, as long as we get all our paperwork in order. And we will send information out as soon as we have it to, in a form that is usable for you. Mr. Martin?
Are we in the process of reviewing that agreement now, notwithstanding the fact that we aren't signing it today? Is the state's attorney's office? got it
Yeah. Yes, yeah. So, and we actually just got some correspondence we were waiting for yesterday.
I mean, there were a couple
Yeah.
issues that I saw in it when I looked at it that I just wanted to know were addressed, but if.
Okay. And you know what? If you still have those issues, email Vince Coyle
All right.
and just send those to him so that can be included in the thinking that they're having in conversation with the firm.
Okay.
Because the goal is we're going to try
I'll
and get
catch-
this.
I'll catch Vince before he leaves.
Okay,
today.
yeah, I'm hoping we'll have a workable document to be distributed Monday. So that you guys have time to look things over, take some notes, tear it apart, whatever you got to do, and then we'll go over it all on Wednesday. And then also, not quite finished with the initial just recommendations. I wanted to at least have a nice presentation for the establishing the parameters of the community support grant program. Just didn't get enough time to finish it, started the conversation, almost there. So we'll have that ready to go with the resolution, which is, it also needs to take a little more shape as well. So we'll have that for next week. And then again, the department requests, everybody will know which ones they have, which projects they have to look at, and we'll get going on that mission statement. So Vince, do I even need to call these resolutions up right now, or can we just simply I can place them on the next agenda? Do we need to postpone them?
You can just put them on the next agenda.
Okay. Well, we did with the one, we postponed it to today, but I don't see that it really needs to be called if we don't have to. I'll just put it on the agenda for next week and hopefully, the documents will be sent to you within 48 hours. That's the goal.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Brown?
comment
Sure.
to really confuse things.
Yes,
Rather than
please.
the 5 teams that we've just created, sending in what they would like to, what committees or what departments they'd like to review, I would like you to just assign the departments to the 5 teams.
Okay.
Yeah.
Personally, I mean,
I
when
would
Mr.
agree.
Martin first spoke about, it'd be great if we were, assigned a team or a department that we were on the committee with. I like that idea. Then I like the idea of it being random. And I think if we all send in our request to you, it's just going to get too muddy. And I would love to
It's
be on the
simpler.
development
Mhm.
department request, but yet I would maybe love to learn something more about a committee that I'm not on,
Okay.
that department. So if you just assign them, we're done.
All right.
I agree 100%.
I agree.
too.
Yeah, 1 through 5
Okay,
or
so
1
then-
through 15, number 1.
And then I won't consider knowledge or experience or committees.
No,
We'll just
not at
kind of
all.
randomize
You
it.
know, when you're at home, just throw everybody's name in a hat
Yeah.
and then.
The only thing I would ask you to take a look at, because some departments might have 10 requests, some might have 2.
Yeah.
So don't give a team 2 departments that have got 2 requests. Try to spread the work out
Yeah,
evenly.
no. So you'll each have 15 to 16 projects in
Yeah,
total.
5, yeah.
Yeah. So you figure 7 or 8 individually, but 15 or 16 per group. 15 requests. And the least is 1. We had a few with just 1.
That department, either you could split it up
Yeah,
or one team gets that.
that whole department.
So
which
that's
is probably what will
environmental.
happen. Yeah. So Ms. Bates
By the
will
way,
not be on that one.
but also another consideration would be the dollar amount maybe. Because, is it harder to consider a $2 million?
Later.
Yeah,
Okay.
not later.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that.
All right.
That's a little ahead of where we're at, so. Okay, I think that's it. So
Okay.
unless anyone has anything else, I have no old business or need for executive session.
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Kenyon moves to adjourn of all people.
Hey.
Bates seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned.